you candidates for being here. As you can see, the audience had as much trouble getting to this building through the construction as the rest of us. I'm going to read for the candidates some of the ground rules that I read before. And the rules for tonight, we're going to have it's a restricted time schedule. You'll each receive a minute to make an introductory statement and then a stated set time to answer each question. And finally, up to 1 minute for a closing statement or to address areas you didn't get to cover during the questions. But this is a forum and not a debate. You'll be asked a question, you'll either have a minute or 90 seconds to answer it. And we will note the time limit when we ask the question. We'll alternate which of you answers the question first. We ask that everyone be respectful and courteous. We would like you to answer the question for yourself, avoiding all personal attacks on other candidates. Address your answers to the audience and not to the other candidates. Please don't engage with the other candidates. You'll be advised by the person holding up our paddle is here when there are 15 seconds left and when time is up. If you go over the time, I'll just stop you. So I assume you all have turned off your phones. The audience has already done so. You're not allowed to wear earbuds, which I'm sure you know, and private recording of the forums is not allowed. Be sure, if you want the question repeated, be sure to ask for that. So now, let me make sure you all know, audience, who you're looking at. On the far left, Representative Harriet Hageman. Next to her, John Allen Holtz. Next, Sam Mead. And on this end, Jimmy Skovgaard. So we'll start with an introductory statement from each candidate. You each have up to a minute. And we'll start with you, Representative Hageman.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. It's wonderful to be back at Casper College, my alma mater. I was here in the early 1980s. And I want to thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this event. I also want to tell the family of Linda Barton that I am thinking about them for that recent loss. It has been the honor of a lifetime to represent the folks of Wyoming in Congress. My team and I have worked tirelessly to make sure that we are addressing the issues that are important to you. I've been working to support small businesses, the ag industry, the energy industry, local government, the communities, etc. And because it is so important that if you are going to represent Wyoming, you focus on Wyoming issues. Transparency and accountability have been the hallmarks of my 2 terms in Congress, and I will continue to work on your behalf if I am fortunate enough to earn your vote for the United States Senate. If I can say one thing, I can't read it. Is there something?
Well, so that's the 15-second sign, excuse me, and the flip side is the stop sign.
To stop. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz.
Hello, I'm John Holtz. It's a pleasure to be back in Casper. Used to live in Douglas for many years and was a judge in both Douglas and Glen Rock. Back when we had a lot of stuff going on. I was recruited when I worked for Hughes Aircraft, and Converse County had more murders than the rest of the state combined. So I worked on murder cases, and then 21 months later became a judge there, setting up courts all over Wyoming that are now today the circuit courts. At Hughes Aircraft was an interesting place to work, where I did something or some things that no one else had ever been able to do. Obtained the first double-digit firm fixed price, and Hughes Aircraft was the head of the team to redesign the Army's main battle tank, the fire control system, and a lot of experience in international things, living all over the world. And I'm down to, I think, looking at the 15 seconds, so I've still got a few more seconds, so wish everybody a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Mr. Mead.
Well, thanks, Ann, and the League of Women Voters for putting this together tonight, and thank you guys for coming out and being engaged in our politics. My name is Sam Mead. I'm a problem solver. I'm a fifth-generation rancher. I'm a distiller, a software engineer, and I want Wyoming to be a place where our kids are proud to raise their kids. I want Wyoming to be the Wyoming that I grew up in. And that means protecting our public lands and making sure that those are accessible to all the people of this state. That means building a healthcare system that's going to work for people in the state. Rural healthcare is not going very well for us, I think, as many of you know. And there's a lot of ground to make up there. We need to build a diverse economy where our kids can stay here and work here. I look forward to answering the questions tonight, and I'm excited to talk about them.
Thank you. So we have three. Oh, right. Excuse me. I'm too eager to move on. I apologize. I should mention, Mr. Holtz, when you finish speaking, just hit the button again so your mic is off. Yes. Yes, Mr. Skovgaard.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you, Ann, and thanks everybody for coming out tonight. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters. You guys are a power right here in Wyoming. And for those that don't reach out to you guys for help, shame on you. My name is Jimmy Skogard. I grew up in the Bighorn Basin, Grable Basin, went to the University of Wyoming, received a commission in the Wyoming Army National Guard, got a degree in history, didn't really know what to do with that after I got done. Then I said, oh, well, I'll get a job as an environmental scientist and data analyst for Tri-Hydro Corporation. So I said, okay, so now I got history and data. And then I said, well, this isn't working out, so I want to start my own business. So I did an oil field business right here in Casper, salesman mostly, doing my own sales. And so I'm putting it all together, and I'm like, history, data analysis, and sales. Well, I guess that's politicians next. So, like everybody, again, thanks for coming out tonight, and thank you for being a part of our system of government. This is the most important part that we can do.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to the first question. And it's a 1-minute question, and we'll start with you, Mr. Holtz.
What are the 3 biggest challenges facing Wyoming that you hope to address from the U.S. Senate?
I think one of the 3 that I can think of at the moment, that wasn't one of them. Agriculture with this drought, our mineral extractions, living in Converse County, where I visited with that and experienced that firsthand. And tourism, but I think we have some real problems like with our public lands and the access and what we're going to do. We do not want to turn Wyoming into Disneyland. I remember my grandmother telling me stories. She had to worry in 1919 in Gillette about her horse stepping in prairie dog holes. But we do have unique problems here, and we require someone who's not shy and will speak up and keep Wyoming first. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mead.
Yeah, our 3 biggest challenges to me, are that we have representatives that support federal mandates disposing of our federal lands. That's not the Wyoming way, and I want to continue to be able to see our young people enjoy our public lands. The other one, which I touched on, is healthcare. Our premiums are some of the highest in the country. We have an uncompetitive market, and insurers don't want to operate here. We need to fix that. I have a plan to fix that, and I think it'll go a long ways to fixing some of the issues we have. The last one is we do a great job with public education, and we invest in our children. The problem is that we also export most of our children. We need to build an economy that supports, I'm fine if they leave, but it'd be great if they would like to come back. And so that means diversifying our economy and building something that's going to work for our young people.
Thank you. Mr. Skovgaard.
Thank you, Ann. Inflation and the Constitution and the rule of law. We've got to have a government that operates within the boundaries of the Constitution and the rule of law. This is primary. Without that, we have chaos. And when I mention inflation, this is something that we just totally want to avoid is the national debt. It's the underlying cause of every price increase that we're seeing in our lives today. And we don't even hear it being discussed in the halls of Congress. Why? The Senate's not talking about it, the House is not talking about it. And finally, I wanted to talk about a little bit more about accountability. We have to hold our representatives accountable. They have to be accountable to us and not just before elections. We have the technology now to hold our representatives accountable to the decisions that they're making and not making. And we need to be reaching out to them and showing them what we want as constituents right here. And when we have that technology, why it's not being used is simply because we don't have the will to use it.
Thank you. Ms. Hageman.
Well, broadly, one of the biggest issues that we deal with in Washington, D.C. is overregulation. And in Wyoming, that has a huge impact because of the nature of the industries that we have. So I would say one of the primary issues that we have to address is protecting our legacy industries, our energy industry, our ag industry, and our tourism industry. And what we need to do is we need to modernize the statutes and the laws that have been in place for well over 50 years to make sure that they are working for our modern society. Also, addressing rural health care. I agree with that. I think that that's a very significant issue for the state of Wyoming. That's why I was instrumental working with our delegation in making sure that we were able to pass the Rural Healthcare Transformation Act, where just this year alone we were able to bring $205 million to the state of Wyoming so that we can start really modernizing that entire system as well and making sure that we're able to provide health care in one of the most rural settings that we have in the United States. So I've been working tirelessly on making sure that we can provide adequate, not only adequate, but excellent health care here in the state of Wyoming.
Thank you. Now, for the next question, Mr. Hi, am I doing this again? Oh, okay. I did ask you all. Yes, okay. So, the next question, Mr. Mead, you're first, and you'll each have 90 seconds to answer this question. Josh.
Good evening. About 40% of Wyoming is public land managed by the federal government. Do you support the transfer of these resources to the state of Wyoming or any other entities? And what do you believe is the appropriate balance between often competing uses of these lands?
Thank you, Joshua. I don't support any top-down disposal of federal lands. It's just not the Wyoming way. And where I do see, areas where we can transfer land is where local communities have need to expand, or if there's state in holdings that don't make sense. If those are locally driven discussions, those are things I'm fine with. And I think we can streamline that and make sure the process to do that is going to serve communities in a way that's not really lengthy and onerous. I think our state has, not to paint with too broad a brush, and there's been bumps along the way, but I think our state has done a pretty good job of balancing multiple use of federal and state lands, from protecting wildlife migration areas, sage grouse, and then balancing our mineral and oil and gas industry. I think by and large, the state has done a better job than the federal government, and I think the federal government could learn a lot of lessons from the state. I think that's one of the things I'd like to work on is making sure that the lessons we learn in the state, we can apply at a federal level and really streamline that process, make it efficient, and cater to all the stakeholders.
Thank you. Mr. Skovgaard.
Yep, thank you for the question. Federal transfer to state control, probably not so much, not until the state is way plussed up. There's so much federal land that the resources that we have at the state right now don't exist to control that much federal land properly. Now, I would support seeing a state-federal partnership, a very close partnership, and I would even support allowing the state primacy in that relationship. But we need to keep the federal folks involved. These lands are our posterity. We hold them in trust for our children and our children's children. So to talk about randomly selling off 0.5 to 0.75% is ridiculous. We should have never seen that appear in our budget bill this past cycle, and yet there it was. And we raised hue and cry, and rightly so, but we should also be able to have representation that puts those items in front of us as a constituency. We should know about that. It should be coming from Washington. Your representative should be telling you what is in this legislation before this legislation hits the ground. And I think we let the ball fall right there, folks. We need to hold our representatives accountable to us, and they need to tell us what's going on before they vote on it, before the vote even comes to the floor. We need to know what's there if we're interested, and we should be interested in things like public land sales.
Thank you. Ms. Hageman.
Yes, I have been traveling the state, obviously, extensively since I have been in Congress. And I can tell you what I hear from the people in Wyoming are several things. They want better accessibility. They want better management of our federal lands, both of the Forest Service as well as the BLM lands. I think that our national parks, they do a great job there, but that's obviously something very different. And then they also want local involvement and input when there are decisions being made related to resource management plans, for example. The Rock Springs Resource Management Plan is an example of that, where for 10 years there had been extensive local input, and then with the Biden administration they came in and based upon a 2-week analysis completely upended the entire Rock Springs RMP, ignoring the local input that had been where they had engaged for the previous 10 years. The work that I've been doing in Congress in that regard is the Fix Our Forest Act. That is a bipartisan piece of legislation that is sitting in the Senate right now that will go to great lengths to actually improve the condition of our national forests. Another one that I'm a co-sponsor of is the Great American Outdoor Act, which is appropriating an additional $2 billion for infrastructure in our national parks, Forest Service, BLM lands, and with our Indian schools. I'm a strong supporter of those. I have also voted to fully fund our federal land agencies. And so I'm someone who comes from a federal land state, and I have worked diligently and very hard in Congress to make sure that we are protecting those resources, not only for the current generation, but future generations as well, despite the accusations that might be made at different times.
Thank you. And Mr. Holtz.
I favor keeping things pretty much the way they are. We are in an extended drought. We are in something we haven't seen in a long time. And you look at the fires that are popping up all over Wyoming as recently as today. The one that was looking at yesterday was on the Converse County, Natrona County line, went from 3 acres to 6 acres, then to 85 acres. And then, fortunately, I believe, someone told me it was out. I looked as I came today from Douglas if I could see smoke. But we're in a different a situation that we haven't been in. We look at the shortage of water that we send downstream, the problems that we have in other states. Look at the fires in Colorado right now that we have, that the smoke is coming into Wyoming. I had lunch with some people. The lady, the wife of a friend of mine, her eyes were basically tearing from the smoke that we believe was out of the Colorado. And opening these lands to tourists and this kind of thing is not a good idea. I have watched, like, the state of California deteriorate over the years. We want to keep Wyoming rugged and beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you all. And Mr. Holtz, if you could turn off your mic. Now, Mr. Scovard, you're the first this time, and you will each have 1 minute to answer this question.
What criteria will you use when evaluating presidential appointees? How will you weigh competence and qualifications against the president's prerogative to build the team of their choice?
As a senator, you have an allegiance to the administration that you're working for. So you need to carefully consider the president's choices that are handed to you. But at the same time, if they hand you a choice that is totally unfit for the office, then as an oath the oath that you take to the Constitution supersedes the allegiance that you have to the President of the United States. And we need to take a closer look at that, folks. We're nominating people that are not fit for the offices that we're asking them to serve in, and we're seeing the results of that today. We're seeing the results of that unfold right before our eyes. And to sit back and say, oh, this is all part of some plan, I just can't accept that. This is part of the reason why I got off the couch and ran for this office, is because we're seeing a serious case of the nonsense invading our political system.
Thank you. Ms. Hageman?
I think this is one of the most important jobs that a senator has, is vetting people who are going in to the administration. Prior to going into Congress, I was a water, natural resource, and constitutional attorney for 34 years, and I dealt with many federal agencies, represented lots of clients here in the state of Wyoming that were being prosecuted by federal agencies or who were suing federal agencies for a variety of reasons. And what I've learned is that the head of those agencies are the ones that really do define what their culture is going to be. And what this does, being a U.S. Senator, this is one of the reasons that I've made the decision to run for Senate rather than running again for the U.S. House, is it gives you the opportunity to actually work with the nominees, to talk to them about what the issues are that are important to them and how they plan to govern. So for example, we've already talked about it. We're one of the richest energy states in the nation. We've got the federal lands, we have the water issues, we have our ag, we have our legacy industries. One of the things that I intend to do is make sure that I work closely with any nominee, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican nominee, and make sure that they are going to protect, or that they are going to focus on and address Wyoming issues.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz?
I would ask the Lord for guidance. That's number one, and it's something I think all of you in the audience should do also when it comes to candidates. That's important, very important. We are in times that are unprecedented. We are in a time of war, and it's not getting better. And we're in a theological war with Iran, where they believe they have to start a war and be losing for their Mahdi or Savior to come and save them. And we look at the headlines, we look at things. In the Senate, you have good people that come as candidates, you have people in between, you have some that shouldn't be there. So never be afraid to ask the Lord for guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mead?
I mean, so the United States is the most powerful nation in the world, and Senate appointments are some of the most important appointments that we make. Being the case, we need to make sure that, you know, when we're appointing people, these are some of the best minds in the world, and these are some of the most competent people in the world. I worry, you know, that's not the case now, and that always has to come first before anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Hageman, you're the first this time, and each of you will have 1 minute to answer this question. Josh?
Thank you. In recent years, the balance of federal power has tilted from the legislative branch to the executive. What do you think is the appropriate balance between the legislative branch to the executive branch? And what changes do you believe would be necessary to achieve that?
So this is such a critically important question. We have Article 1, 2, and 3 for a reason. And I believe Article 1, when you look at the framework of the Constitution, that is the legislative branch, and it was discussed first for a very important reason. The legislative branch has actually abdicated its responsibilities in many ways by allowing the executive agencies to take over their legislating and lawmaking authority. I am currently the chairman of the Article 1 Task Force for the Republican Study Committee in the House of Representatives. representatives, the very purpose of which is to try to find ways to pull that power back to the legislative branch. Because we are a republic, we are a representative form of government. I am answerable to you. I'm here today to answer questions and to present my view of things. I go out and do town halls and meet with people and hold hearings and things like that so that people know that I'm representing them. That's a republic. A nameless, faceless bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. may not have any idea of what your issues are, but I should as your representative, and that's why it's so important that the legislative branch reclaim its authority for legislating and taking that away from the executive branch.
Thanks. And Ms.
I agree that in some cases the executive branch has seized too much power, and we need to make sure that there is a separation of power, both horizontal and vertical. And that's the way things should work. And in my experience, I actually, in Wyoming, came up with a case, well, not came up with a case, I had to hear it, State X Rail Motor Vehicle v. Holtz. That's the shortened version of it. The legislature in Wyoming passed a law saying judges have to pick up driver's licenses and issue new ones when someone pleads guilty or is found guilty to a DUI. And I said, wrong branch of government, that's the executive branch, not the judicial branch, to issue driver's license. The Supreme Court upheld me in Wyoming, so I had the courage to do something, actually. So I just thought I'd point that out. But the federal problem is severe, and it requires, I think, very quick and immediate action. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mead.
Public trust in Congress is at all-time lows, and it's because they can't get anything done. I was a software engineer for many years, and I've seen the power of making small changes quickly. What you see in Congress is not that. We have huge bills that very few people understand, and as a result, the amount of legislation passed by Congress is trending towards zero. In that situation, it's very easy for the executive to seize a lot of the power and the legislative branch to just abdicate power to the executive. We absolutely need to turn that around. The legislative branch is the most important branch of government, and we need to start making laws fewer and faster. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Skovgaard.
Thank you for the question. Article 1 was the first article drafted by our founding fathers, and it was drafted that way for a reason. Congress and the Senate are the closest to the people, and they need to be the most responsive branch to the people. The people speak through their senators and their congressmen. The idea that we have relinquished so much power to the executive so that we could wake up one day and find ourselves embroiled in a war, and Article 1 power, we find ourselves faced with the reality that we can wake up the next morning and be in a war when we had no say in that, none of us. And we should be reaching out to our constituencies when we see these types of grabs for power. The executive needs to be reined in. If we need to sit down and work with one another until we have 2/3 of the Senate and 2/3 of the House to do this, then we need to rein in those executive powers and put limits on them again. Otherwise, we are going to wake up one day and be embroiled in a war that we're not going to be able to just walk away from.
Thank you. So, Mr. Holtz, back to you. As the first one, this one, you and each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. Jordan.
Members of Congress have information about business interests that most members of the public don't have. Lawmakers also write laws that could impact the companies they are invested in. Many Americans see that arrangement as a conflict of interest. Would you support legislation to ban lawmakers, their spouses, and their dependent children from trading individual stocks? Why or why not?
Yes, I would. I see Nancy Pelosi has done rather well. Her husband's not a great driver, though, but still, yeah, she's done great in the stock market. And had she had inside information, who knows? But it is a possibility, and yeah, people in Congress, you have people trying to lobby you, tell things, do things. So I would definitely support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mead?
Yeah, of course I'd support that. There's no reason our politicians should be treated any differently than the rest of us. And to have that kind of leg up is immoral. Our young people have a distrust in our government, and failing to pass any sort of ban on congressional stock trading just feeds into that. And it really bothers me that that isn't something that's been passed yet, and I would absolutely support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Skovgaard?
Thank you for that question. I'm from the people. I'm for the people and of the people, and we, the people, don't trade stocks with insider information, and so neither should the folks that represent us. If we need to enact legislation to do that, I'm wondering why it's not already been done. A little miffed by the idea that we can send folks to Congress or the Senate and they walk away, walk in with a couple of 100,000 and walk out with 20 million plus. That's wrong. We shouldn't be using our position in government to enrich ourselves. We should be using our position in government to work for the people that put us there. And if we can't do that, then we don't belong there. Citizens, defend the Constitution. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hageman?
Yes, we need to hold lawmakers to the same standard as private industry when it comes to insider information and being able to use that to trade stocks. So yes, I agree with that.
Thank you. Now, for this question, Mr. Mead, you're first this time. This is a 90-second question for each of you to answer. Josh?
Thank you. Healthcare is top of mind for voters. In fact, when we polled them on issues they were most concerned about, the top answer was healthcare affordability and accessibility. Do you see the Rural Health Transformation Program funds as the solution to bringing down the cost of insurance and care and increasing the availability of services in our state? Why or why not?
It helps, and that's great. But I wonder if anyone in this room has seen their premiums go down or their service improve from that. I think the answer is no. And the reason that is because this is a bigger problem than just rural health. It's the fact that our entire health insurance industry is broken. And until we fix that, we are not going to make any improvements on the burden it places on people. I think the two issues are that we have a burdensome administrative system that adds a lot of unnecessary overhead and cost. And then the second issue is that we just don't have the insured pool. So I think to fix those two issues first, I'd like to see us implement a standardized system across the country for all our insurance providers to use the same thing. As a software engineer, I know the power of having standardized protocols. Doing that would enable us to build some portability into insurance and create a nationwide marketplace instead of a statewide one, which solves some of the amortization risks that insurance companies face with small insurance pools. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Skovgaard?
Thank you. This is an important issue. Almost every community that I've visited this year and last year have brought in health insurance up. A gentleman here in Casper has a faith-based group that he pays $500 a month for him and his wife. They're 62 years old. I'm like, that's amazing. I visited with a family of 4 in Pine Bluffs, Wyoming. They pay over $32,000 a year. Why is there such a spread? My conclusion, healthcare is broken. Health insurance is broken in Wyoming. We can do better. How do we do better? I say we start looking for a statewide insurance pool. We in Wyoming lead. We bring the funds because money is power. Money is what's driving this issue. The deficit's driving up the cost of our insurance, and we need to take charge of that on a state level. Bring our health insurance funds to a state-run fund and have that fund either negotiate on our behalf for the entire state of Wyoming so that we can get decent health care and coverage across Wyoming, not just for you and me, but for every single Wyomingite. That's something that we're not denying to folks. When we talk about, what if we end up providing health care for an illegal immigrant? what if? We're going to do it anyway. If we do it through our emergency rooms or we do it through a state-run plan, that works better for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hageman.
Yes, thank you again for that question. The Rural Healthcare Transformation Fund, I think it's important that you understand how that was put together. First of all, much of the point of that was that it would be state and local driven, because every state is different. Maine is different than Wyoming, we're different than New Mexico, we're different than Oregon, we're different than Montana. So the point was that this would be very state driven as to what each individual state's needs are. So it is the Wyoming legislature that was, it was their responsibility to come up with the plan that would be implemented in the state of Wyoming, and they just did this last legislative session. So there's a reason why you may not have seen the impact of it yet, and that is because it just went into effect over the last few days. So the Wyoming plan will be implemented by the state of Wyoming, which is how this was intended to operate. So do I think it's going to be transformative? I do. Ultimately, Wyoming will receive over $500 million in over a 5-year period to implement this plan to address the specific needs of our communities, whether it's Rollins or it's Pinedale or it's Gillette, and every one of them are different. Some of the other things that we need to be looking at, though, is we need to be looking at PBM reform. What is happening with our pharmaceuticals? We also need to be looking at being able to buy and sell insurance across state lines. The reality is that Obamacare drove health insurance companies out of the state of Wyoming. If you understand that basic fact, then you can start working backwards to see how to fix it. And the Rural Health Care Transformation Fund is a wonderful step in the right direction.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz.
Years ago, I remember people coming to me when I was a judge in Douglas and said, "John, can you have dinner with us tonight? We've got a doctor who's thinking of moving here." Because I said, sure, trying to talk doctors into coming there because we were short. My judge's chambers, the courthouse, was across the street from the hospital. Now, we have more problems, and we have legislation, but think what happens if you make changes to Medicare where people lose, Medicaid as well as Medicare. They will eventually affect that. But if you lose Medicaid, what's a person going to do? They're going to go to the emergency room. And then what happens when they go to the emergency room and the cost? The cost is double or triple what it would be otherwise. So we have a real problem. I think it's going to affect Wyoming. I think Wyoming has a possibility of losing a number of rural hospitals if things aren't changed. So you have to really look at legislation. In law school, I took a specific course that wasn't offered in Wyoming in legislation, how to write it, how to do it, that kind of stuff. But we are in a real problem in Wyoming. We are a unique state, and we need to do the right thing at the right time. Thank you.
Thank you. So now, Mr. Skopgaard, you'd be the first up. This is another question that'll be 90 seconds for each of you to answer. Jordan.
The Social Security Retirement Trust Fund is projected to be depleted in late 2032 if Congress does not intervene. Should the program be salvaged, replaced, or allowed to sunset? How?
This is an interesting question because a conversation that I had with a younger voter in Wyoming centered around why should I pay into the Social Security Trust Fund? Why should I be taxed and pay those taxes now? And I'd never heard that question. It never even occurred to me. And then I started looking into the Social Security, and I noticed that we're slated to run out of money by 2032, and if we do nothing, we all take a hit of $500, or at least the folks receiving benefits take a hit of $542 or something like that. And I'm like, wow. And during a time of inflation, we're going to take a reduction in Social Security benefits if we do nothing. Now, there's some fixes. I mean, we could extend the tax, instead of capping it at 100 and whatever it is, 107,000 or whatever that is, we could extend that. But the real fix is that we need security in our Social Security system at the federal level. And Wyoming has the perfect system. Wyoming's Permanent Mineral Trust Fund could be a model for the government, for the federal government. We could start taking physical assets and put those into the trust fund, those assets that appreciate faster than, or at least at the same rate as inflation, instead of the assets that we're using to back our trust fund now. Those assets are just simply bonds, and sometimes those bonds can be pegged at less than the rate of inflation, which impacts the overall solvency of the fund. We need to do something about that, and we need to do something about it right now, or we are going to answer the question, why am I paying into this?
Thank you. Ms. Hageman.
Thank you. I think there's two things we have to look at. And one is the number of people paying into the system, and then also waste, fraud, and abuse. The fact is, the more people who are in the workforce, then the more people will be paying into the system and shoring up the entire program. In fact, with the One Big Beautiful Bill that we passed last July, one of the things that we did for Medicaid reform is that we are requiring that adults with no dependent children who are not disabled need to go into the workforce at a rate of 20 hours a week, that they need to at least be working part-time to be able to get Medicaid. Just as a result of that one reform, there are 4 million people who are now in the workforce that were not in the workforce a year ago that are no longer receiving welfare payments, that are no longer they're getting the Medicaid, but they are now in the workforce paying into the system. Also, what we've seen in Maine and Minnesota and Ohio and California and these other states and Illinois, the amount of fraud that has been going on in these federal programs for years is absolutely off the charts. And it is imperative. It's not $10 billion. It's not 20 or 30 or 40 billion dollars. It's potentially hundreds of billions of dollars or more of our hard-earned tax money that is going for fraudulent purposes. That is one of the issues we are going to have to address in any of these federal programs to make sure that they are available and viable into the long-distant future.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz.
Thank you. There are a number of problems. For example, the COLA, cost of living, has not kept up with inflation. Since 2000, it's lost approximately 1/3 of its value. So that doesn't match. And then we look at the thresholds that were passed around 83. Those are not adjusted for inflation. When they first were passed, virtually no one paid tax on their Social Security. Now, approximately half do, and pretty soon everyone at almost the rate of ordinary income. And you put that with the fact about this cut, there's still money to pay Social Security, but as we're looking at in approximately 6.5 years, 7 years, somewhere 76 months, around a 21, 22, 25% cut. Now, if we raise the cap, make it like Medicare, that will probably buy us 20 years. But the problem is, the longer you wait, the harder it is to fix. And someone says this is the answer or whatever, and then a year goes by, or 6 months, 18 months, and it no longer will work. So it requires a joint bipartisan effort of Congress and the President to fix this, and it should be a priority. Because otherwise, it's not going to be kids moving out. They'll be moving back in with their folks, and their folks will be moving back in with their kids, because neither one's, the folks won't have enough money to live on if Social Security is cut in half, basically in buying power. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mead.
I would salvage Social Security, because all of us have been paying into Social Security. It's not an entitlement. It's something we've earned through our work, our hard work. Social Security is the single most important and effective program we have to keep the recently young out of poverty. And a 25% cut after the trust fund runs out would devastate our elderly population. The first thing we do is cut the cap. That gives us a lot of breathing room to solve the more structural issues with Social Security. So much of our system is built on the predication that we're going to have population growth. And when that pyramid starts to invert, a lot of these assumptions start to fall apart, Social Security being one of them. But I do think it's a problem we can solve, but let's get some breathing room first with cutting the cap. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, this is our final question. Representative Hageman, you'll be first, and each of you will have 1 minute to answer the question. Josh.
Carbon-based energy industries have supported Wyoming for generations. What are your views about the balance between supporting these essential energies and making room for diversification from other energy sectors, such as wind, solar, and nuclear?
So one of the things that you have to look at is just basically the density of the energy that you're producing. Wyoming is the largest coal producer in the nation. We're now the largest uranium producer in the nation. We're also the 8th largest, or approximately 8th largest oil and gas. It has treated, these resources have treated Wyoming very, very well. And the fact is that we have so many resources available right here in the state of Wyoming to continue to produce those. Wind and solar, I think you're probably all aware, I'm not a huge fan of them, and there's many reasons why. They just simply do not produce the same level of energy as oil and gas and our traditional historical energy resources do. You have to consider the cost, you have to consider the opportunity cost, and we have enough coal and enough oil and gas to continue powering this country for hundreds of years. I think that it's important that we continue to find different markets outside of the United States. We're going to be doing that with a new port going out of Oakland. There's many opportunities to continue to use these produce and use these resources in Wyoming.
Thank you. Mr. Holtz.
Yes. Do you all know what happens when you take a piece of coal and it gets under enough pressure? It turns into a diamond. We need our resources, and we should use what we have. The coal, uranium, oil and gas, rare earths that we have. Wyoming is an energy treasure trove. And wind and solar work sometimes, but I am not in favor of them. And if Tinkerbell sprinkles fairy dust, I guess they'll work. But you have to depend on that. And we need stuff that's reliable. We need things that are reliable, our energy. And using what we have is very important, and using it wisely is even more important. And it takes, in troublesome times, you have to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mead.
Wyoming's kind of the crown jewel of energy production in the United States. And as demand increases over the next years, we're going to need to be producing a lot more power. And that means more of everything. I think, as long as these projects are paying their own way and returning value to the people of Wyoming, we should build them. If you look at coal, we all know what coal have just done to this state. As a mayor of a really small town, I saw every year how important it was and how much of our budget was paid for by things like coal. And we didn't build coal by saying no to things. We built it by visionary leaders who probably knew there was problems along the way, but people in Wyoming can solve problems. And I think we can bring that to any kind of energy production here in Wyoming. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Skovgaard.
Thank you for that question. I actually studied physics for a while when I first got to the University of Wyoming, and I found that was a pretty intense field of study. But part of that study was studying the nuclear energy that was available to us, and I thought, why isn't Wyoming, producing more nuclear energy? And we just don't have the will to understand as a constituency, as you and I. We need to take the time to understand how that new energy source is not new. It's tested, it's proven. We need to start looking into it a little bit more closely and how we can integrate that in. Because at some point we are going to just start phasing out some of our legacy energy industries, and that's the one that will replace it, the clean one that will replace it. In the meanwhile, we're not going anywhere with coal. We're not going anywhere with oil and gas. I built an entire business in the oil and gas industry supporting that, a little small business, and it's treated me well. It's treated my family well. It continues to treat our communities well. And so we'll continue to support those as we think about transitioning to a new energy source.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for all of this. You now have each have up to 1 minute for your closing remarks. So we'll start with you, Mr. Holtz.
I didn't hear what you said. Is it for closing?
Yes, it's for closing, and you have a minute.
Okay. In 1969, I came from Munich, Germany, where I went to school my first year at the University of Maryland. I then came to Wyoming. But I was the only one to test out a history, get hours from the history department. But I want to point out we are now at war, and the Japanese bombed Wyoming in 1944 with a Japanese balloon bomb. They figured out the air currents, the right altitude. Around 3.5 days, they can get incendiaries or high explosives over it. Killed several people in Oregon, but it was in the Owl Creek Mountains in Thermopolis, Wyoming. That was 80 years ago. We are now at war with Iran that's the size of Alaska, that could reverse engineer the weapons like Hughes Aircraft. Other companies went there. We have to be prepared for an attack like another Pearl Harbor. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you. Mr. Mead.
Yeah, thanks for having us out tonight. You know, my kids are 7 and 8, and I want to build a better Wyoming and a better country for them and for your kids. If you think there's too much money in politics, if you don't feel like your voice is being heard in Washington, and if you want someone that's always going to put Wyoming over anything else, you know, I'd love to have your support and your vote on August 18th in the primary. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Skofgard.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. Thank you, moderators. I appreciate the opportunity. We're divided right now. We're divided as a country, divided as a nation, divided as families. It's time that we put the nonsense of big money politics behind us. We need folks that are willing to step up from the people. The people are the ones that are going to be left holding the bag. We might as well elect someone from the people to start the cleanup process. And it's going to be a long and arduous process. It's going to be a little difficult. I'd just like to remind everyone that we, the citizens, defend the Constitution. This division that we see is about control. It's to get us to separate from one from another so that big money can retain control. A handful of very rich people sitting at the top of our process right now are doing that. Take a look at who you're voting for. And I'd like to give a shout out to Becoming Peacemakers, who's going to hold a meeting here tomorrow night at 7 a.m., their inaugural event tomorrow. I'd like to see folks come out and support that movement also. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hageman.
Yes. I love Wyoming, and I love representing Wyoming. And my team and I have worked diligently and tirelessly for you since the day that we were elected almost 4 years ago. There's something that I am particularly proud of, though, and that is the work that we have done for individual Wyomingites throughout this state, both small businesses as well as individuals. We have now resolved over 6,000 cases on behalf of Wyomingites. We have returned over $16 million to individuals in this state. That is money that was being wrongfully withheld by a variety of different agencies, whether it's the IRS or the VA or Medicare services or whatever it might be. We've also worked diligently to help our local communities to be able to make all of our lives better. We have brought about $40 million back for sewer systems, for police cars, for a variety of infrastructure projects. That's the kind of work that I am the most proud of because it affects everybody in the state individually. I have truly enjoyed and I am so honored to represent you in the U.S. House, and I would welcome your support for running for the United States Senate. Thank you for this evening.
Thank you. So, thank you, candidates, very much. And this concludes tonight's primary election forum for the U.S. Senate race. Yes, please.